I'm Truman the Grey Merchant, and I started this project before Blank Goblin got banned. For as long as they've existed, unsets have been a testing ground for Magic. Many black border cards, and even entire mechanics, have been directly inspired by earlier silver bordered ones. As the Magic rules grow and evolve, it's only natural that people question which formerly silver bordered ideas now function in black border. Unfinity added to this conversation by making every rules compliant card eternal legal. In this video, I've gone over every silver bordered card from unsets, holiday releases, and other promos to see which ones function in black border. I'm not covering Unfinity since this conversation was already had with those cards as the set was being made. Now that some people and groups have done similar projects to this, I have chosen not to consult them, with the exception of some of Mark Rosewater's posts, so as to preserve my own initial reactions. I am sure I've missed things and made mistakes, so please post your observations and corrections below. I'd love to learn more and discuss things. I've separated the cards into 6 tiers based on how close I think they are to being a black border card. At the bottom we have Unworkable. These cards do or care about something that black border simply cannot. Above that is Unworthy. These cards, as written, still don't work, but the base idea could be recreated in a new black border card. Above that is Untimely. These cards don't work in the current rules, but the rules could be adjusted to make them functional without causing the system to collapse. Or the card could be errated to use black border means while retaining the original spirit. Next is Unfair. These cards function in the rules, but are so powerful that I doubt they'd be allowed into black border. Above that is Understandable. These cards are functional in the existing rules, but I'm not aware of a black border card that specifically does the exact same thing. Finally, we have Unambiguous. These cards are directly comparable to existing black border cards. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Dylan Malk, my first ever card appreciator tier patron, who chose the topic of this video. If you would like access to this and other perks, that is linked below. To begin, we have an entire category of cards that are unworkable. Those that care about flavor text or reminder text. This includes those that reference text boxes, which include those elements. In black border, each version of the same card is treated as the same, but flavor and reminder text can vary between printings. Relatedly, cards that care about art or artists are also unworkable for the same reason. I'm putting contraption/crank/assemble cards that don't otherwise not work in Untimely. They aren't currently in the rules, but I could see the mechanics or something like them being added in the future, as Magic continues to explore extra deck elements. Mara's down on it, but maybe one day. Similarly, Host/Augment could probably be added to black border, right? It's simpler than Mutate. Untimely. I'll put cards that care about qualities of names or rules text in Untimely. They are similar to some black border Unfinity cards, but broader in scope. Theoretically, they could have black border cards care about the English Gatherer text of cards. I don't think that'd be a good idea, but I guess it would be kind of functional. Amateur Auteur is identical to a couple of cards, making it unambiguous. I'll put Ambiguity in Understandable, ironically. I believe it works fully within the rules, it's just intentionally confusing. Multi-zone shenanigans are unworkable, as the rules can't handle something being in 2 zones at once. Cards that direct the player to do things outside of the game, or incorporate or care about elements outside of the game, are unworkable. I think As Luck Would Have It works, but it's probably too powerful with the later 20-sided die cards, so I'll put it in Unfair. I'll put Fraction cards in Untimely. It's another concept I don't think is a good idea for black border, but I think Magic rules could be modified to handle them. However, I think Just Dessert using Pi is unworkable. Cards that care about variable elements of a card, like border color, rarity, expansion symbol, promo status, or sleeve status, are also unworkable. Cards that care about spoken words or sounds, such as the regrettable gotcha mechanic, are also unworkable. As are cards that care about a player's attributes. I am running out of space here. I guess AWOL is untimely, since Wizards could add a new zone, probably. We need it now more than ever. Beast in Show is just a war-statted Colossal Dreadmaw. Unambiguous. I'll put BFM in Unwieldy. I think it could be recreated with the meld cards that inspired as evidence. I think BINGO is ultimately unworkable. Theoretically, you could write out what it does in the rules. I think it would be so awkward as to not be recognizable or worth it. Cards that require permanently modifying a card are unworkable. I'll put Blast from the Past in Understandable. It works in the rules, but it's complicated enough that a card directly comparable to it hasn't been made. I'll put BOB in Unwieldy. I think you could recreate the loyalty counter/creature count connection less directly. Cards with dexterity and other physical elements, including cards that have you sneak something into play, are unworkable. Fun fact, Richard Garfield wanted to put Cramped Bunker in Dominaria, which fascinates me. Box of free-range goblins is directly comparable to various D&D cards, unambiguous. I'll put Burning Cinder Fury of Crimson Chaos Fire in understandable. I think it's comparable to various wacky red cards that change control. The layout of the card is not relevant to what it actually does. The card effect is probably a bit undercosted, but I think it would work in Commander. I'll put Buzzing Wackadoodle in unambiguous. There are any number of secret choice cards in Black Border. By no means choose a countertype is untimely. The rules list various countertypes, so I could see the idea working, but I don't think they've done it yet. I'll put checks and balances in understandable. I think this card's intent could fully work in Black Border, especially since multiplayer-specific cards are now very common. Chicken a la King's first ability is now fine, since it was errated to care about birds instead of chickens. Black Border cards can care about whenever you roll a specific number. I think the second ability also works, but I'll be honest, I find the dice rolling rules confusing. I'll put it understandable, but I recognize I could be wrong. Chicken Egg and Chittering Doom are less ambitious die rolling cards, so they're unambiguous. Clan Ambassadors gives your opponent control of one of your permanents, which multiple Black Border cards do, making it unambiguous. Black Border can re-roll dice and modify results, making cards that do that unambiguous. Goblin Bookie also allows you to reflip a coin, which I imagine would work similarly. Scroll-powered Scheme increases all your results, which works under the same principle. Socketed Sprocketer does something similar, but more weirdly, so untimely. Clocknapper steals phases. Phases can be skipped and replicated, so this is perhaps untimely. I'd put Topsy-Turvy in the same category. Switching turn order can be done. Switching phase order hasn't been done, but maybe could be. Crowstorm worked in the rules when it was made, but its mana value is questionable enough that I'll put it in unfair. Compare it to Chatterstorm and Empty the Warrens, which both got banned in Pauper. The Killbots are cards with different names, considered to be the same card, a concept that is unworkable in Magic's rules, as are cards with identical names and different abilities. Curse of the Fire Penguin is an enchantment that modifies a creature. It's kind of comparable to Mutate. I'd put it in unwieldy. Denied fully works within the rules. Cabal Therapy demonstrates how Black Border can have you name a card and get an effect if that card is in your opponent's hand. I don't think it's consistent enough to be unfair, so unambiguous. Discord, Lord of Disharmony, allows you to cast a copy of a random magic card. Black Border can cast copies of specific magic cards. Probably the biggest problem is that you need the internet to reasonably determine a random card. Untimely. Do-it-yourself Seraph very easily sets up weird cases. For example, there are multiple artifact creatures with contrasting power toughness modifiers. I think it's unworkable. There's a reason why Ikoria didn't have a card that grants every creature mutate. Crusader Monster Masher is similar. The Double Cycle and Time Machine have an effect on the next game you play with a player, while Gus cares about past games with that player, and Gesture Sombrero and Look at Me, I'm the DCI remove sideboard cards for the rest of the match. At best, these are untimely. Maybe as non-constructed legal conspiracy type cards, but those are barely Black Border. I'll put cards that care about watermarks in unwieldy, since the same card can be printed with or without a watermark. Black Border can't currently care about them. Maybe there could be another uniform indicator that cards could refer to. Earl of Squirrel is untimely. Squirrelink can easily be written out. The other abilities are entirely regular. Elvish Impersonators has power and toughness equal to dice rolls. I don't think that's been done in Black Border in that exact way, but I think it's possible, so understandable. I'll put subgame cards in unfair. I'm stretching the definition a little to not realistic for tournaments. While Shahrazad is banned everywhere, it is in the rules. Evil Presence has a creature attack its controller, an unworkable concept. Extremely Slow Zombie has Last Strike, and Three-Headed Goblin has Triple Strike. Mara stated that Last Strike as a keyword would involve heavy and difficult changes to combat rules. The basic idea is perhaps unwieldy. Cards that allow a player to put an opponent's card into their hand are unworkable. Flavor Judge cares about the story of an interaction, another unworkable concept. Flock of Rabid Sheep is a coin-flipping card that makes tokens, which has been done in Black Border several times, including in a card older than this one, unambiguous. Each element of form of the scroll can be found in a Black Border card, making it unambiguous. There could be some combo potential I'm not aware of that makes it unfair, though. A card like Foul Play shows up in most Premier sets, unambiguous. I'd put Frankie Peanuts in unwieldy. Something like it could maybe be done in Black Border, but as written, it is not even limited to magic questions, making it unenforceable. Head-to-head is similar, where you could do something with the idea, but it's too nebulous as written. I think free-for-all works in the rules, but I'm putting it in unfair because I think it's a color pride break, especially at that cost. Free-range chicken is unambiguous, as Black Border can care about specific qualities of a role. Fruitcake Elemental is the first holiday card we've looked at that I think is fully functional in the rules. Unambiguous. This would be a fun card in Commander. Gerrymandering fully works in Black Border, but has the potential to be deeply unfun, so unfair. Get a Life refers to teammates, which are now a Black Border concept. It wouldn't do anything in Intuitive Giant, the most popular format with teammates, but the card still works. Unambiguous. Organ Harvest and Team Spirit are the same, but more useful in 2HG. Gosband Ogress cares about how many games a player has won that day, which is unworkable. Mark Rosewater said that Giant fans' counter conversion does not work in Black Border. Maybe a card could do something like it. Unwieldy. Climax is unfair. I think the targeting thing would work. You can choose new targets, but the mana value alone would be abused. Ignoring that, it would be cheated into play. I don't think that would lead to fun gameplay. Goblin Boiling Team does damage based on a die roll, which Black Border can do. Unambiguous. Goblin Secret Agent has you reveal a random card from your hand each turn. I think this could have been done in Black Border at the time. Unambiguous. Goblin Tutor searches for a different kind of card depending on the results of a dice roll. Black Border can do this, but hasn't yet, making it understandable. Even though it's cheap, the randomness keeps it from being broken. Go to Jail cares about rolling doubles. This hasn't specifically shown up in Black Border yet, but as stated, Black Border can care about specific qualities of a roll, so I think it could probably do this. Understandable. I'm going to start grouping together die rolling cards that only do things we've already talked about in Unambiguous. Hammer Jammer is another die rolling card that does something Black Border hasn't done but probably could. Understandable. I am torn on Hangman. On one hand, its rules are pretty straightforward and functional. The only issue is that choosing a word would have complications when it comes to different languages. I think this ultimately makes it untimely. Hungry Heifer has the same effect as Chaisei Heart Emotions. Unambiguous. Hydrodoodle is directly comparable to Neverwinter Hydra. Unambiguous. Incoming tutors permanents and puts them on the battlefield, which any number of Black Border cards can do, making it unambiguous. The high cost probably stops it from being broken. Cards that deal with Infinity are unworkable because that isn't actually a number, it's a philosophically debated concept. Rules-wise, Jack in the Box is comparable to the infamous name sticker Goblin, but I think it might be unfair. A 0 mana Mox that tapped for 1 generic mana with a 1 in 6 chance being sacrificed with each use, but no additional requirements, would still probably be too good. Mad Science Fair Project is mechanically similar but much weaker, so unambiguous. Mana Screw is similar but uses a coin flip instead of a dice roll, which doesn't change the category. Activate only as an instant is weird, but does show up on Black Border cards. Jalum Grifter might be unwieldy. The method may need to be adapted a bit, but the base concept seems like something Black Border could do. Johnny Combo Player is entirely rules compliant, but probably unfair, at least in Commander. Look at me, I'm R&D, break something, right? There's got to be a reason early Magic never did this when they made all those other text-changing cards unworkable. Same for Magical Hacker and more or less. Mary O'Kill's swapped cards retaining all conditions is, at best, untimely. I think mine is unambiguous. It's comparable to Enter the Infinite, and the high mana cost and symmetrical nature mean that it is probably not unfair. There are better ways to win with Thassa's Oracle. Mize is another card that could have been Black Border when it was made. However, I think it has the capacity to be unfair. It can be Ancestral Recall in the right deck. Modular Monstrosity requiring you to make a choice within 5 seconds is unworkable. It just isn't feasible for online and tournament play. Nor is tracking what you've chosen today. The only unusual element of Neverelemental is that it had 4 different flavor texts. It's one of the most unambiguous cards out there. Old Fogey is understandable. They haven't done a mix quite like this in Black Border, but they easily could, rules-wise. Though the Echo ended up being made pointless due to rules changes. Once More with Feeling would be obnoxious enough in Commander to be unfair. Over My Dead Bodies, Graveyard Shenanigans would require major rule rewrites. Untimely. Paper Tiger, Scissors Lizard, and Rock Lobster refer to each other in their rules text. Black Border cards are allowed to refer to specific other cards. Unambiguous. Party Crasher attacking during an opponent's turn is unworkable. Pippa, Duchess of Dice, is unwieldy at best. No black border card is going to have activate only anytime it makes sense on it. Present Arms has you exchange one deck for another, an unworkable concept. Princess Twilight Sparkle refers to various cards that don't work in black border. Spatula of the Ages Oracle text refers to a silver-bordered or acorn permanent card. Since you would only use these in games with silver border cards, there isn't really a point in making them black border. So I don't see a reason to devote time to thinking about it. Unworkable. Same for Underdome. Proper laboratory attire has protection from dice rolling, stating that nothing that lets a player roll a die can block, target, deal damage to, or attach to a crypt creature. That's the kind of loose writing that early Magic used, but black border cards from like 1996 onwards don't. Probably unworkable. R&D's Secret Lair instructs players to ignore all errata, which clearly wouldn't work in black border. Rainbow Dash's coolness is similar enough to experience counters to be untimely. I think Richard Garfield PhD actually gets up to unfair. It seems like it works, but I shudder at the combos it would enable. Ricochet has targeting determined by a dice roll, an understandable concept. I think rocket-powered Turbo Slug is actually unambiguous. Cards can enter the battlefield from your hand, tapped and attacking, and the pact cycle that RPTS inspired shows that delayed costs are okay too. Here's a big question. Does Rules Lawyer removing state-based actions break something? I feel like the answer is yes, but I'm not smart enough to find it. I'm putting it in unworkable because it just feels wrong. If it does happen to work, it's probably still unfair. Season's Beatings is less complicated than Brawl. Unambiguous. Shelliphant's ability can be activated in any zone, which seems problematic. Unwieldy. 60 Beast is another guessing card that should work in black border. Understandable. SNOT is untimely, but Mutate again provides evidence that this could be added to the rules. Snow Mercy has a cutesy way of essentially writing tap. Otherwise, it's straightforward. I think it's actually unambiguous. Spark Fiend is weird, but not problematic. Understandable. Spike Tournament Grinder, allowing access to any card that has been banned or restricted in a constructed format, is obviously unfair at minimum and probably unworkable. Split Screen's multi-library shenanigans are unworkable. I need to stop calling things shenanigans. Staying Power is another card that is easy to understand, but would clearly cause headaches in certain situations. Unworkable. Strategy Schmatamy works within the rules. I question if the potential for a 2-mana Armageddon makes it unfair, but the randomness means that it would be occasionally annoying at most. Understandable. Unfortunately, the rules apparently can't handle trample on spells, so Super Duper Death Ray is relegated to unwieldy. Sword of Dungeons and Dragons is untimely because it would add a new color identity. Target Minotaur is identical to Lightning Visionary, unambiguous. Temp of the Damned just has the equivalent of fading with indetermined by a die roll. Understandable. The Cheese Stands Alone is interesting because it is identical to Baron Glory with one crucial exception. Baron Glory checks at upkeep while the Cheese checks continuously, which is not how they tend to do alternate win cards. I think it's still understandable though. The Fallen Apart could be errated to use counters, so untimely. What the Grand Calcutron does to hands seems too radical to be workable. The ultimate nightmare of Wizards of the Coast, registered trademark, customer service, has variables Y and Z. The rules state that some objects use the letter Y in addition to the letter X. Y follows the same rules as X. Therefore, the rules can handle extra variables, but don't yet reach Z. Untimely. Timeout does the same thing as Underdark Rift. Unambiguous. Timmy Power Gamer definitely works in the rules, but is it unfair? It's repeatable, instant speed, and the creature doesn't get sacrificed, but Timmy himself is very vulnerable. I think it makes it up to unambiguous, but they should keep a close eye on how he performs. Troglodyte could possibly be errated to recreate what it is doing with black border means, so untimely. Uktabi Kong does two simple things. Enter the battlefield artifact destruction, and tapping specific creature types to do something. It goes infinite with a token doubler, but it also costs 8 mana. Unambiguous. Urza Academy Headmaster uses a website to generate a random result. Maybe they could explore that space in the future, but for now, it's untimely. Water gun balloon game is unwieldy. The basic idea of rewarding whoever casts 5 spells first could be done in Black Border. Finally, Who, What, When, Where, Why is a 5-faced split card. As written, the rules for split cards specify 2 faces, so it would take a minor rules change. Untimely, but not that difficult. As a bonus, there are 2 cards that have an unworkable element that I think could inspire fun Black Border cards. Ak Han's Run has a verbal component, but I could see Wizards make an enchantment that has you sneak attack a card from your library each turn. I'm not sure how that would be costed, but I don't think Ak Han's Run is so undercosted as to be unfair. Psychic Network has a physical element, but the idea that everyone plays with their top card revealed to everyone except themselves is doable and I think has merit. Here are the untimely results, roughly ordered by how likely/worth it I think the rules change would be. Taking the upper tier of that tier, we have all the Silverboard cards that I think could be added to Black Border with minimal disruption. I don't know if this will ever or should ever happen, but it's a fun thought experiment at the very least. I know the Goblin fiasco soured a lot of people on this idea, but 1, I simply can't make myself care about the state of Legacy and Vintage, and 2, I do think how Unfinity handled legality was ultimately a good thing. You can point to Rule 0 all you want, but on one side, a lot of Magic players can be very legalistic with Commander and even Kitchen Table. And on the other, a lot of Magic players don't stick up for themselves, especially with people they don't know well. For years, people have been asking for Black Border versions of Silverboard cards that function perfectly well, and as we've seen, there are a lot of those. Making those cards eternal legal from the beginning is an idea with merit. What do you think? Please let me know your takes on that and any other aspect of the video below. Thanks again to Dylan and my other patrons. Bye.